Puerto Rico is known as the island of enchantment. It's a gem nestled in the Caribbean that captivates with its lush landscapes, vibrant Latino culture, and warm hospitality. It is a harmonious blend of enchanting natural beauty, delightful cuisine, and a rich musical heritage, ranging from salsa to reggaeton and urban rhythms. Over the years, Puerto Rico has gifted the world with exceptional artists such as Hector Lavoe, Daddy Yankee, and Bad Bunny. However, beneath its surface, Puerto Rico also serves as a major transshipment point for drugs originating from South America and destined for the mainland United States. As a U.S. territory, drug cartels strategically consider Puerto Rico an ideal location for storing cocaine, later using commercial aircraft and cargo ships to transport it to cities like Miami, Philadelphia, and New York. Multiple Caribbean drug routes originating from Colombia and Venezuela utilize vessels and private aircrafts to deliver cocaine to Puerto Rico. Unfortunately, over the past decades, this has fueled the creation of local gangs, driving violence, crime, and corruption across the island. Numerous successful reggaeton singers who have emerged from the streets in impoverished neighborhoods have found themselves incarcerated for felonies related to drugs, legal firearms possession, or money laundering. Many of them have managed to transition from jail cells to sold-out concerts, becoming an inspiration for their fans as they triumphed over adversity and paved their own road to success. In this episode of Illicit Investigations, we explore the stories of various Puerto Rican reggaeton music artists who have either been imprisoned or investigated for crimes linked to gang violence, drug trafficking, and money laundering. Join us on this intriguing journey into the underworld of Puerto Rico, the island of enchantment. On April 3, 2016 at 3:40 a.m., Emmanuel Gazme Santiago, also known as Anuel AA, left the nightclub Tobacco and Rum in San Juan, Puerto Rico with two friends. They got into a car, and a few blocks later, their vehicle was stopped by agents from the Puerto Rico Police Department Drug Unit. The agents were targeting a criminal ring. The agents checked the three passengers and discovered 3 firearms, several rounds of ammunition, and 5 cell phones. Anuel was in possession of 2 Glock pistols. Federal agents who arrived at the scene determined that one of Anuel's Glocks was a stolen gun. None of the passengers had firearms licenses. All 3 individuals were charged with federal offenses. At the time of the arrest, Anuel was under the influence of drugs. Anuel entered a plea agreement and accepted the charge of possession of a firearm by a drug user. 2 years later, on July 17, 2018, he was released from federal prison and his career began to soar, making him one of the icons of reggaeton music worldwide. In some of his lyrics, he mentions his family's involvement in drug trafficking. For instance, his brother Alexander Gazme Santiago, also known as Cascarita, was arrested in April 2017 at the San Juan International Airport for his involvement in a drug trafficking ring. This organization sent multiple shipments of cocaine to various U.S. cities through passenger flights. As an employee of the Air Margaritaville restaurant, Alexander assisted in hiding kilograms of cocaine within the restaurant's facilities, which were later handed over to passengers flying to mainland USA. This drug trafficking organization was led by Humberto Concepcion Andrades, also known as Alex Carreta. This Puerto Rican kingpin was associated with a Colombian cartel and lived in a mansion with his family where he kept a tiger as a pet. Anuel's brother was released from prison on August 3, 2022. The world knows him as Farruko, but his real name is Carlos Efren Reyes Rosado. His singles have reached the top of the charts worldwide. He has won 2 Latin Grammys. The lyrics of his songs used to make references to sex, partying, and the use of drugs. However, in 2022, his career took a 180-degree turn when he decided to serve Jesus Christ with his music after having some divine revelations. He also asked for forgiveness from his audience for his previous albums. But Farruko's career hit a bump on April 2, 2018, when he landed on a private aircraft at Isla Grande Airport in Puerto Rico from the Dominican Republic. On his customs declaration, Farruko stated that he was carrying less than $10,000. However, during a K-9 inspection, officers discovered $51,802 concealed under the insoles of shoes inside his suitcases. As a result, Farruko was charged with bulk cash smuggling and making false statements to federal officers. He had to forfeit $41,802, and he was sentenced to 3 years of probation. Local gangs involved in drug trafficking and street drug sales represent one of the most significant social problems in Puerto Rico. In June 2023, the FBI arrested 40 gang members in San Juan on charges of drug distribution and illegal firearms possession. These gangs often take over public housing projects across Puerto Rico, converting them into stash houses and drug distribution points. Their main products for sale include heroin, crack cocaine, marijuana, fentanyl, oxycodone, and Xanax. Additionally, gang members are implicated in other criminal activities such as car theft and assassinations, contributing to the high violence rate on the island. In a similar FBI raid that occurred in October 2002 in the city of Ponce, David Sanchez Badillo, a local rapper and songwriter known as Tempo, was arrested for managing a drug point in a housing project called Los Lirios del Sur. Tempo had launched his music career in 1998. By 2001, he had become the most successful hip-hop artist in Puerto Rico. He signed a contract with Sony Music in 2002 for a multiple album deal. However, in the same year, he was indicted on drug conspiracy charges. Following the indictment, Tempo was sentenced to 24 years in prison, but served only 11.5 years due to good behavior. Upon his release in 2014, Tempo resumed his music career at a slower pace. Since then, he has faced death threats from gangs in his hometown of Ponce. Naughty Natasha is a successful and beautiful Dominican reggaeton singer who rose to fame in 2010 when she released an album with Puerto Rican star Don Omar. Over the following years, she collaborated with artists such as Becky G, Bad Bunny, and Thalia. In 2016, she achieved a significant milestone by becoming the first female artist to sign a contract with Pina Records, a Puerto Rican record label owned by Rafael Antonio Pina Nieves. Pina is one of the most important reggaeton and hip-hop producers in Puerto Rico and has played a crucial role in the success of artists like Daddy Yankee and Nicky Jam. Also known as Rafi Pina, he took on the role of Naughty Natasha's manager. Their professional relationship eventually developed into a romantic one. In 2021, they got engaged and later welcomed a baby. However, in 2015, Rafi faced fraud charges in a criminal case and was placed under supervised release. Then, in 2020, during an FBI money laundering investigation, authorities discovered 2 guns and 526 rounds of live ammunition in one of his properties. As a result, Rafi Pina was indicted on 2 counts of firearms possession and was sentenced to 3 years in federal prison. His release date is set for July 2024. Javid Alvarez Fernandez, also known as Jay Alvarez, is a Puerto Rican urban singer who began his music career at the young age of 14 on the streets of San Juan. Besides his passion for music, he also loved playing basketball and drew inspiration from renowned rappers like Busta Rhymes and Q-Tip, which led him to craft his own lyrics and participate in freestyle events. Although he collaborated with local artists and appeared in a notable production called Baby 69, his singing career faced delays in taking off. Coming from a financially disadvantaged household with both parents being Dominican immigrants, he found himself recruited by a local gang during his teenage years to sell drugs on the streets. In November 2004, a DEA operation resulted in his arrest while he was selling heroin in San Juan. He served 4 years in a federal prison. After his release, his music career began to soar. Jay Alvarez started collaborating with artists like Tego Calderon and Nicky Jam. Eventually, he moved to Colombia, where his career reached new heights. Currently, Jay Alvarez is a strong critic of the political and social situation in Puerto Rico. He highlights the lack of opportunities, which often pushes young individuals to make mistakes similar to the ones he experienced during his earlier years. In Puerto Rico, the relationship between music production and drug traffickers has blurred lines. William Omar Landrón Rivera, better known as Don Omar, is one of the most successful reggaeton singers in history and has also been featured in the Fast and Furious saga. In 2006, Don Omar was connected to the former drug trafficker Alex Trujillo when one of his cars was found during a raid at Trujillo's house. Additionally, 2 years prior, Don Omar was arrested for carrying a firearm while smoking weed in the city of Carolina. According to a local investigative journalist, in the early 2000s, Don Omar and the duo Wisin and Yandel received large sums of money from two prominent Puerto Rican kingpins, Angel Ayala, also known as Angelo Melones, and Jose Figueroa, aka Junior Capsula. The cash was used for their music production expenses and video shoots. Reggaeton singer Cosculluela has also faced investigations regarding his financial connections with Angelo Melones. In an interview with Playboy magazine in Mexico, Don Omar mentioned his admiration for the mafia culture and confessed that during his early days he could have easily become involved in drug trafficking. Drug traffickers constantly seek ways to launder their money, and the music industry has become one of their targets. Since reggaeton and urban music often originate from marginalized neighborhoods and individuals with limited financial resources to advance their careers, many artists are susceptible to receiving money from criminals. In March 2023, a Puerto Rican urban singer named Arthur William Rodriguez Sanchez, also known as Drizmali, was arrested in connection with a drug conspiracy involving 23 other individuals. The indictment revealed that Drizmali was part of a criminal organization that had been importing cocaine to Puerto Rico since 2017, using private vessels from Colombia, Venezuela, the British Virgin Islands, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Prior to his capture, Drizmali claimed through social media that his case was fabricated. In the past, he had launched several successful singles and even made an appearance in the film Fast 5. Despite Puerto Rico being part of the United States and granting its residents U.S. citizenship, the island's unincorporated territory status has led to a lack of influence in U.S. politics. Many Puerto Ricans feel abandoned by the federal government in areas such as security, financial assistance, and infrastructure. Furthermore, owing to its strategic geographic position, Puerto Rico is particularly susceptible to drug trafficking and consequent gang violence. As such, the lyrics of many reggaeton songs often allude to guns, drugs, money, and sex. These are pivotal elements drawn from the real-life experiences of numerous Puerto Rican urban singers who grew up on the streets. This is Illicit Investigations. Subscribe now to our channel to go beyond the headlines.